future viewing of this meeting. Now, please call roll.
Donna Bayless.
Here.
Nick Lovell. Here. Jeannie Ewan.
Here.
Steve Meyer.
Here. Please rise for the allegiance. Tonight, pledge allegiance to the Roman silence. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. There is no comment tonight, so you can start off with your presentation.
All right, so we're just gonna have a nice discussion on budget versus actuals to start out, and then we'll jump into some internal personnel constraints here, and then we'll cap it off with baseball, softball. And the baseball and softball is the handout papers that I gave you. We'll walk through those when we get to that time. I'll jump into the presentation. So the first one here, this graph represents the last the last 15 years or so of historical data for the district. The reason I provided this to the Finance Committee and the public is to show historically what our budget to actuals look like. I know there's been conversations of large projected deficits and then large surpluses. So I wanted to snapshot both the expenses and the revenues in those snapshots. So if you look at the blue lines, those are budgets for the past from 2010 to 2026. You can see that nice steady upward trajectory. As costs go up, so do district expenses. I included the budget to actual percentage difference for the last 5 years. If you note, the last 3 years, the expenses came in above actual. The main reason for that is the transfers. Transfers from general fund to capital reserve are considered expenses, and that's why we have to have those on the board agenda in June as a tentative expense. It goes backwards. So when we jump into the breakdown of those expenses, the main reason we had that difference was because of those transfers. So I just wanted to show that that trajectory is a nice steady. This is in my opinion, the good budgeting here. So we're no more than 3%, and that's off of that transfer. We moved that 3.2 million, so a lot of that 3% was that. In my opinion, I think that's pretty prudent budgeting from a budget to actual standpoint. So I guess any question, we'll do the same analysis here on revenues, but just the expenses standpoint here.
Tom, if I can interject just very briefly.
Yeah.
When I first saw that chart, I was pretty impressed with that. In most districts or organizations of this size, with the amount of unpredictability of certain things that could come up along the way, all kinds of things, especially major maintenance types of issues that have, I don't see any year there over 5%. And anything less than 5% for your budget to your actual is really good, really good. And I want to commend the Thunderbolts for doing a really good job for a long period of time when it comes to matching the budget to the actual. That's worth noting in my opinion.
I guess any other questions, I guess, with the historical expenses? I know we'll jump into 24-25 data later on in the presentation, but just as a high-level view of the historical information. All right, so no any questions, we'll move on to the revenue. So on the opposite side of the coin is revenue. So some of you can see some spikes here in the revenue versus where expenditures was a nice steady line. The big factor that we talked about at a board level is we got ESSER fund, with the most of it being assumed in 2023 and 2024. That was the ESSER 3 where we got the most money and the most supplanting of the budget by conjunction with that, we also were increasing taxes to raise funds for the project, but we didn't have the project to pay for. So we had all the revenues with no expense to offset those revenues. Now we know we have those expenses. We also had favorable interest income. We were pretty cash heavy. I invested pretty heavily. I noted that, and you'll see some of that investments that we showed. So those three were the main factors for the past 3 years. As you can see, we've always stayed around that 3% mark, 2 to 3% mark historically. We just got some one-time gains that we don't expect to continue.
What happened in 2025?
We'll jump into that, Donna. That's a good
Okay.
question. We'll pause on that until we jump into that
Okay.
in a couple of slides. All right, so then we'll jump through. The next is just a sideways comparison. So total revenue versus total expenditures. And here's what the budgeted deficit was, 1.2 for 24-25 budget, and then the actuals came in. And you remember the last finance committee we allocated funds, it was actually $1.5 million. Well, the 475, like I talked about, is the expense. It's in here, which led to the majority of this over expense between budget to actual. The other large ones we'll talk about, like I said, in the next slides. But you can see we got above expected revenues. And like I talked about, some of those are one-time revenues we couldn't expect. Another one is the state has been very positive in their trying to fund education from the state level, and us in Littlestown are a recipient of that. So we got wildly above expectations from a state level that we would have anticipated back in 23-24 when we were estimating this budget. So yeah, Governor Shapiro has been trying to put more money into school districts to help that from the state level.
Is it okay for you to tell us exactly where the 2.9, how we were able to get to 2.9?
Yeah, we can jump to that. I have a slide and 2 more slides on that.
Okay, you're good.
Yep.
You're good.
So we're going to jump into the expenses first. So I highlighted here in the yellow the 3 major expense points that led to the above budget expense, the total expenditures. So you can see in the property services, we did have a large insurance claim. This was the water damage at dams when a pipe froze. We did claim this through insurance claim, but that does affect our expenses. We did receive insurance money back. This is some of the insurance, some of it would have been in the prior year as well, but this is the bulk of it here as an expense standpoint in this 24-25 year. This cyber charter school tuition, I know we beat a dead horse talking about it, but it's almost $900,000 of unanticipated extra funding. That's not something that the school board can fight against. That's not something we can fight against, but that's the sole reason we were over expenditures in the budget.
You also can't predict who's going to switch to cyber.
Correct. And we're forced to pay it. We have little legs to stand on, especially 24-25. They're working in that direction. We have a little more weight behind us for 25-26, but there's not a whole lot we can do when kids are enrolled. They say they're enrolled, and then they send us an invoice. We have to just verify the kid is in the eyes of the state, and then we have to pay that invoice. So that's one of the major reasons. Obviously, there's some others sprinkled in, but most of these you can see are under budget. If you look side by side, some professional services here. That is mostly a transition between in-house substitutes to outsource substitutes, and that's an actual, because originally we had those budgeted in a salary and they got moved to education as a professional service. So some of that is the money was up here and it got pushed down here from a budget standpoint, and that's why we have those budget transfers throughout the year. There is really supplies slightly, the rest everything else came in at or around budgeted, and you can see that 475 of that transfer. I guess any questions on an expense standpoint of what last year budget to actuals? Go ahead.
So let's start out with the total of expenses, so you got 41,056,339, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so is that like the final total of
Yes.
actual expenses? Okay, so if I go to the previous slide,
Mhm.
where I see the which I don't know if it's final, but I'm gonna,
The
actual, where it
399.
says actual,
Mhm.
yeah, total expense, 41,56,399. Where am I off? Where am I lost it?
But more than likely it's a typo. Because this graph,
I was trying to find the difference.
it, yeah, it's 399 instead of 393.
I don't care what it is, whether it's $60 or $6 million.
He just,
Right here, so- so
he
three-
just, he plugged that number in.
Yeah,
and
three-
he just put the number
Oh.
in.
399 versus 393. This
Okay.
this is 100% accurate. That more
Okay, so
than
go with that one, then, right?
yes. This
Okay.
is definitely then just a typo because it's just one digit.
But it's all good, I just
Yep.
needed to know, it's all good. Okay. So with that said, on the insurance claims, so you're saying, the 128, was that the insurance money that they paid us for the damage?
No,
Or is
that
that
would-
our loss?
That would be on the next page of what they paid us. There's some loss assumed because work was completed and we assumed it in 23, 24 and some were completed in 24, 25. We received the revenue in 24, 25, so we booked the revenue in 24, 25.
Okay, so what's this 128 then?
So that was the portion of expenses we paid.
So loss, so,
If we get to the revenue, if we wanna jump then, that we received 130 of insurance money back. So we had some loss in 23, 24,
I got you.
and we had the majority of the loss in 24, 25. But since we incurred the expense and invoices, we booked it in 23, 24. From accounting standpoint.
So it's actually both then, right? We got it.
So we had a loss, we had the claim money back from insurance company, less our deductible.
Okay.
It's just the insurance didn't pay us until we submitted all invoices and then they released their funds back.
So are you counting the 128 here under
Yes,
expenses as a loss on this chart?
it's part of the 703,820.
Okay. And then the same would apply for the charter,
Correct, of the 5.3 million,
part of that?
900 of it, 900,000 is over budgeted. So 500 includes transportation, if you look on the description, it includes transportation costs, insurance costs, for like the premiums and tuition. The tuition portion of that, there's a number in there for cyber charter school. And we paid $900,000 above budgeted, what we would have budgeted
Okay.
for cyber charter school.
And then the same would apply, what's the CR transfer?
That's capital reserve transfer,
Gotcha,
the
gotcha,
board just
okay.
approved.
So the 475 is part of the 1.6, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Gotcha, I got you. Thank you.
We can come back if there's some more questions on expense.
Well, I kinda wanna go to the one previous,
Yep.
the block one. So, the way I read it, we were lucky to have received our revenues of the 2.95 million, more than we had budgeted. However, we continue to overspend our budget year after year, and recently we did by 1.9, what it looks like is 1.9 here. The actual total expenses is 41 million, and the budgeted total revenues of 39 million and change. Would have given us a deficit of 1.9 million, 1.916044. But we were lucky that our actual revenues came in at 42 million, with our expenses at 41, so I guess right now we're sitting at a surplus of 1,034,704. Am I right with that or no?
So that you are equating the budget to the actual.
So I'm just going off the map on this page.
Correct. So when we look at the budget, when we we don't budget state increases, we budget 96% collection for taxes. There are some nuances in the budget.
Okay,
So to compare that from 39 to 41 of expense
okay,
is not quite accurate in that standpoint. We wanna look at it from the 42 to the 41, actual to actual, because there's a lot of things that are included in the budget that didn't come to fruition from an expense standpoint, that we had in there originally, we didn't purchase. There's personnel in there that we had that left that we didn't replace. So there's a lot of, back and forth in there. So to say that we were short from 39 to 41 is not quite, one for one analogy there.
okay, I'm just going off what it says on the paper, it says total revenue, budgeted total revenue for 24-25. I just thought that was a budgeted total revenue.
It was, correct, but with the assumptions we make with the budget, total revenue does not include a lot of factors that come real time. So one example is state revenue, we only budget level funding from prior year.
Okay,
If the state would give us more funding, that shows up in the actual, but it won't show up in the budget.
Very conservative.
Correct, so that, to say that 39.1 comparative to 41 is not necessarily showing that we were fortunate to get additional revenue, it's just we didn't foresee we were gonna get additional revenue, but it happened.
okay,
From a state standpoint.
but what I did was I went based on the actual expenses compared to what it says for, the total budget. The 24-25 budget. So, it's all good, I'll figure it out somehow, but the math doesn't look good on this page, it just doesn't look good. And, based on this math, it looks like we could, if we stayed to our 24-25 budget, if this was our budget, $39,140,355, if we stayed to this budget, if this was our budget, based on our actual total revenue, which was 41,056 and change, we would have got a surplus. It could have possibly been a surplus of 2.9 million. Is my math wrong?
The math's not wrong, the concept of equating the 39,140 to the 41, I think is the misconception.
Okay.
Because within the 39, we don't include if there's any state increase. And we assume certain collection for taxes, we just make assumptions. In reality, a lot of times they are conservative assumptions and they end up
So
being
what you're
better.
telling-
So that to hold that revenue budget, now the expense budget, we try to hold that as best as possible. And that's where that cyber charter really hurt us last year in not being able to keep that expense budget. The revenue budget is a different category to equate that, to hold that. Just because of the uncertainty that the state brings, that's the large majority of why there's always the difference between the budget to actual, and that's historically what most districts do. Level funding, I know Dr. Moore and I talked about that, that's the only guarantee we get from the state, is that you will get no less than you did the prior year.
Right.
So the example this year is we didn't receive funding for 4 months, we weren't sure what funding we were trying to get, but we knew we weren't gonna get any less than last year. So that's the only safe bet. In reality, they could go as much like they did this year, it's 1.5 million more than we anticipated.
So then when you do our budget then, are you basing our budget based on hopeful increases? Or are you doing our budget based on level funding? Okay.
I believe that's a prudent move to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
In Pennsylvania and in the Commonwealth here, your state subsidy, but because of the hold harmless, if you're familiar with that, we know we won't get less, but we possibly could get some more. Comment, did I misspeak on that, or is that correct?
No, and that's one of the major reasons why the budget to actual revenue is usually always skewed, because the state generally gives more, we just don't know how much, and we can't guarantee how much. Some years it's been none, like in 2020, 2021, next year, and now the past couple years, they went above and beyond estimations. It's been one end versus the other end of the spectrum here for the last couple of years to be able to predict that. That's why if you notice from a advocacy standpoint, most school districts are asking the state to have their budget in prior to June 30th so that we can have some consistency with that. As we well know, does not happen very often.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll jump into the revenue section. So as I talked about, we had some high-level state funding. So we'll just go down the list. So interest earnings, I had estimated back in 23-24 that the Fed was going to contract a little. They didn't contract, I believe, hardly any in 24-25 as I anticipated. So I was able to secure $926,000 from an investment standpoint, just in general fund, which is $326,000 over the budget. So that's obviously we can't guarantee that every year, but that's a windfall for the district. This healthcare accrual, this is a recommendation from the auditors on how we handle healthcare since we're self-funded. That accrual category was on our balance sheet. This year, the auditors had deemed that immaterial and requested that we put that back into revenue. That was part of some of that surplus in that fund balance, and it got reallocated through the means. Like I said, that was an auditor request that we do that as a practice to look at currently as revenue. So that's been kind of sitting out there for a couple of years, and now they finally said that they want that on the revenue statement. So that's we can ask them some additional information, but that's mostly from the county standpoint, their recommendation. The state funding, like I said, we got over $1.5 million increase from the year prior. So these numbers here, these actuals, actually the one they just solidified in 25-26 will be used for the 26-27 budget. So these are even outdated information. You can see the large increase is where that Ready to Learn grant we talked about, where I believe that's going to be the facilitator of most of the state's money now, rather than basic ed subsidy. They have that new funding formula. They put that through adequacy. They have a cap, the tax adequacy, which we here those I don't qualify for. But that's the main vehicle that most of the dollars in the state are now entering. They add some stipulations to that. What we can and can't use that for. Dr. Raymond and I worked through that through the grants. And then the sale of the fixed asset, that's the land sale, less the fees. So we did sell the land for the 475, and then we had some fees associated with that. So that's the net difference between those fees. And then like I talked about that insurance recovery we received from the water damage at 8500 middle school. You can see we had a couple things in here sporadically. We had a little over taxes, just barely, and a couple other items here that were over. But these were the major categories of what affected to get us that $2 million. Any questions, I guess, on revenue?
Yeah, I have one. On the athletics, how do we go down the athletics from budget to actual?
Ticket sales were less than anticipated.
That's all this is, ticket sales? Period. Okay.
Any other questions? So I will say the auditors will be here at the work session on Monday to present the audit. So if you do have questions from now until then, they'll be via Zoom. You can answer questions. They'll go through a very similar presentation that they did the last couple of years. Just a high-level overview of the audit. From there on the questions. If you have additional questions or information requests, but it'll be questions about financial from last year, we'll jump into, the custodial discussion. So, this is a request, from Victor and, his department. If we know we outsource with interstate, cleaning services for most of our custodial cleaning, we still have, I believe, 6 in-house custodians. They have been unable to fulfill positions, so if you remember back in September, we had triple threat cleaning come in. They sent one person to be put on the board agenda who did not meet clearances and qualifications, so they were denied, and they have yet to respond or send us another applicant since. So we were hopeful that they would work out, and unfortunately did not. So Victor has been researching other companies in the area who might be able to accommodate substitute services, with Interstate still trying to hire. So Platinum Cleaning is the request to be on the board agenda to be a substitute service, to give them a test, and they are on an as-needed basis, the same with triple threat was. So that'll be, showing up on the board agenda for January for discussion as a, board, and then we will see that makes test that Platinum Cleaning service. So the problem still remains that we're still anywhere from 3 to 4 full-time custodians short. Currently it's 3.5, with the half being the stadium and the maintenance facility as a half-time person. So what problems that Interstate's facing is when they get people, they go through their interview process, they get the clearances, they come here, they make it on site, and then they leave within 1 to 2 days. A lot of times we don't hear why. We assume it's either the work load, the time of day, a lot of it's second shift. Just might not work out for them personally. Interstate usually doesn't hear back from them either. So that's just the struggle we're in. So we had the discussion internally, what are some options that come out of this? So that's where the discussion is for the solution. So with the prior board, we went out to RFP, conducted a nice RFP to outsource all of our custodial, keep the equipment, and we would purchase the supplies, but basically everything else would be under the contract. The problem that we face is that the RFP costs came in way above what we estimated. We thought we were close in a budget, those RFP costs were $250,000 more. So the question is, do we want to try RFP again? We can slightly tweak it, but obviously costs 2023 till now more than likely went on. So we can try it. It's probably more than unlikely that they will come back favorable this time around, but we can certainly try. The other option is we can look at changing how we handle cleaning internally. We can go with alternative cleaning schedules. I had just a snapshot is trash and bathrooms every day. The classrooms might get done every other day because they're short staffed. They have just enough time to do bathroom and trash in some classrooms, and then the other day they do different classrooms. We also talked about all the staff cleaning one building one day and a different building the next day. The other option is we can purchase equipment that supplements the people we have, such as a robotic scrubber that we see in most large Sam's Club or Giant. We do have one to be purchased with a project up at the high school, but we can purchase a second one or have one here that supplement the people. So we're open to options, but those are the ones we can think of right now that help get our buildings clean and keep them clean. But we have to have some type of leeway to work with, because currently being 3.5 people short, the current custodians we have are doing lots of overtime and trying their best, but they're gonna burn out quickly if this continues.
Are we not competitive enough? Is that the issue?
And some of it could
To the
be,
industry.
we haven't researched deeply to know what the outside industry's rates are for custodial work. I think it's just, there's not a lot of people who want to do custodial work. I think it's just the candidate pool is slim, and when they do come and they find the work that's required of them, they can go elsewhere for more money, for less responsibility. Because it is a lot of responsibility. They have to have certain clearances, they have to have training to make sure they can handle chemicals right. They have to have a certain standard of cleaning that we request of them to make sure stuff is cleaned up to standard. Some of that gets a heavy load for people who may not want this job, might want the job to begin with.
And then we also have competitive larger districts, cities that are fully in that pool as well.
Yeah, we're somewhat secluded here, though, sound even though we're close to enough cities, and we're rural enough that we don't entice people to come here in competition. We've had that with substitute services, we've had that with transportation, we've had that now with custodians. Just we're in that weird spot where Baltimore's closed, Harrisburg's closed, York is closed, Hanover's even closer currently, Littlestown's not. Like a hotbed for people to they can get more in those city locations.
Do we think that there would be more alleviated responsibilities once we're out of the ministry?
We do anticipate we can do with less people, but not 3.5 reps. So some of it is when we have the robotics cover, that's gonna alleviate some time of people's effort, but we still need people to go to the places and clean them, and it's just not enough time and not enough people to get there. Even if we might be able to lose 1.5 people, but then we're still too short.
And right now, are they cleaning every classroom every day?
To the best of their ability. I can't guarantee that every classroom every day gets done.
Is that now standard, like, in every school district?
Trying to clean every classroom every day. I would say this is a struggle, not just at Littlestown, but at a number of districts finding support staff, especially in custodial and maintenance. Many of them are dealing with the same issue we're dealing with. Tom, I'm guessing you've talked to the other business managers in the intermediate unit, and I'm guessing they're having the same type issues we are. I do think in the near future, as prices go down on robotics and with artificial intelligence and whatnot, I do think that's going to replace some of these, at least some of the demand that's there. Right now, I think that's a little bit cost prohibitive for us, and not just us.
Yeah. So Victor's talked a lot of maintenance. The people who have in-house people have their very tenured staff for related to their district, just like ours. We have 6 people who've been committed to the district for a long time. It's when they lose those committed people, they have trouble replacing them. Some districts are big enough they can go out to RP and do those. Some of those are successful. We try those companies. They're just out of our price range, and that's where we're willing to raise our budget to accommodate those. So there are companies out there that can service us. We just don't have the budget to support that kind of.
Tell us how far that reaches.
That's at 250.
Oh, okay.
Are we, is there like a health and safety concern with not cleaning every classroom every day?
Obviously, yes. Flu season is always a high priority, especially here at elementary school. Most of those kids. So
Do you know what level are they cleaning the rooms?
I can't answer that currently. I just know our daytime custodians stay and work overtime. Like evening custodians work overtime to try to get as many classrooms and clean them to the best of their ability. I can't say if I know they probably don't get to every classroom every day, but they probably get to the majority of them. It's just.
Who can speak to what they do, Victor?
Victor could speak to what they do every day, and how much they can get done every day. We just haven't gone down that pathway because we want to basically hone in on which avenue to support these people, because we just know that they can't continue to do 12-hour days, 5 days a week forever. Like there's gonna have to be some type of alleviation somewhere.
I would just say this, getting into the buildings, my perception is, again, I don't get into every room. But our custodians do a good job. They're working pretty hard. And I think a lot of that, as Tom said, is probably because of some of the overtime work and so on, which is costing us a little more in that regard. Something that Tom, Steve, and I talked about when we were preparing for this meeting is, some of the things that we can control internally, like making sure at the end of the day, the chairs are up on the tables, making sure at the end of the day that, the boards are clean, the trash is off of the floor, the trash cans are in the hallway, which will help our custodians. That may not sound like a big difference, but when you're talking about 60, 70 classrooms, that few minutes that it saves every classroom adds up during the course of the whole shift and so on. So we're going to do those kind of things that we can control, but then even beyond that, there are things that, beyond our control that, where things just, have to be done, so.
So if they're putting the chairs on the tables aren't getting clean.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, it's.
You got snotty fingers and stuff.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, we are asking for our staff, our teachers and our kids maybe, to be a little more responsible especially at the end of the day, to do what they can do to help us out in that regard. And I don't think that's all that unusual, and frankly, I think it teaches a little bit of responsibility.
From my perspective, I would anticipate that the RFP is going to be more than a $250 difference.
Yeah.
$250,000 difference. So I don't think that that's a viable option. I think that looking at some creative solutions would be a good thing. I think that we need a little bit more information, so maybe Victor can come to the next committee meeting and tell us what the custodians do day to day, and then we can kind of figure out what things could sort of be sacrificed maybe every other day.
So I'll say in the RFP, I can pull that up and send that. We did put in like what was requested as a daily cleaning, as a weekly cleaning, as a monthly cleaning, as an annual cleaning. So we have that breakdown. I just can't speak to what gets done any certain day. If some things on a daily cleaning just don't make the cut, and they get pushed to a weekly or every other day. But we have that list. I can provide you what the expectation is, but I can't personally speak to what the people in the building are actually.
I would be able to tell us that, because that was one of the things I was thinking, was like, okay, if it's flu season and they're going through and wiping the desks off every day, that might be an important thing. But if they're not doing that anyway, then what in the classroom is getting cleaned every might be, and that's just stuff that we don't know.
I would like to know what it will look like, or what they want it to look like once we close the middle school.
You mean for staffing or just?
Yeah. I mean, with them not having work overtime, what would be the number that they would definitely need?
Yeah.
For regular hours, if they're everything done in overtime.
I think when Victor and I talked about it, I think it was 1.5. I think it's 1.5 positions less. It could be 2. I'd have to review the notes, but we looked at that. He had a
Let us know.
Yes, he had a study done. We can go back and look at that. That's been a year and a half or 2 years ago. He had that study done. That said, based off the size of the building, the features we will have in the building, what they estimate custodial staff will be.
Was that a pass-fail study?
That was done by Hilliard that came in, but they are a big academic proponent. Yes, they came in and conducted that study on Victor's request. That was like at the beginning of the project, we were looking at staffing, needs, so they could even come out and update that now that we have actually a more finished product.
Right.
And they might even have less, like I said, we do have that robot, which you play into that.
Have we gone to go to this?
Yes, so, when I go to business, like monthly meeting, Victor also goes to one for, maintenance, and he's asked several times, he's trying to get other companies' names. Like I said, it's a mixed bag of in-house versus outsourced.
Yeah.
And the good names we hear from outsource, we ask them what their prices are, they're pretty, unfavorable from what we currently have in the budget statement. So, we wouldn't anticipate that there would come in any different than this RFP cost difference.
Do they have any open RFPs currently?
That I can't answer. We didn't ask that question.
Okay.
But I know we asked for all the RFPs to pick, like, to use uses ours as a baseline
Yeah, I was
to
thinking.
conduct ours 2023, so we received about 5 or 6 of them that have them. But I can't ask if there's, I don't know if there's any currently
If
receiving.
they did, maybe if we're open, we might be able to jump on there.
We could, it depends on the distance.
Right.
Some of those companies do RFP based off the proximity.
Okay, have we thought of looking at, multiple private companies that might be interested, like, I know right now there's a lot of residential cleaning companies out there that are really seriously looking for work. Now, I know that we have our own, you know, we have to do background check, fingerprints, yada yada. I get that, a lot of those, companies actually do fingerprints, you know, they require that also. So there might be some sort of close match, I'm sure they'll have to.
Safety standards, mixing chemicals.
So they
Yeah,
would-
they'll
yeah.
still have to do a.
They still have to do training for
Yeah.
chemicals, but some of the problems we face with those, they don't have enough staff to accommodate a school district
Well,
that many classes. So some of it's like you might have to get 3 companies to be able to do the work,
right.
and it's about the same cost as just getting one large company when you piece it all out.
So. the
We
smaller-
can go try,
Okay.
but some of them, like I said, they don't even want to be interested because they can't accommodate the scope, the size and
Okay.
scope of this picture. But
If
yeah,
they're doing people's houses, they have to do school work too.
No, I get you, but the reason why I was thinking was that if they're looking for more work and they're not getting enough houses, if they're willing to make that jump and make a commitment to the schools instead of houses, you know what I'm saying? And if it's a private.
They should come work for us as a,
Well, that's
as a
what-
custodian.
Well,
We still post like that?
since we went with, that we haven't posted a custodial position since we were with Urban Quality, which was, I can't even form, there hasn't been one really posted because the contract was a all available position. We found that the available positions could be stopped from hiring. It was, just wasted interviews, because they just didn't want to come. So we said that that's better time served doing other things to get that to a contractor to do those interviews and give us some of the qualified candidates. Victor was getting 4 or 5 interviews, people would show up for them, people wouldn't come into work, and it just wasn't worth his time. He has other things to do. So we decided that the district just not those things. We could try again, but we haven't looked at those starting rates quite some time because of that practice.
We have those, positions, sports center.
We didn't increase those.
But they're benefited, right?
Correct. I'm saying the starting salaries, that since we weren't hiring, I believe we didn't increase those. So we don't know when we're actively trying to hire.
Right, at least post, and that's something that, see if we can do it. I mean, obviously, the pool's probably slim. Let's try, but in terms of, like I said, in terms of the RFP, I think we're gonna no for now. And then, I know, Victor, the next meeting about some of the alternative cycles and different things that we do, also some needs.
Any other discussion?
I would not be in favor of purchasing any new equipment right now. And I really think that, it would be beneficial, I don't think it would be a waste of time, I think it would be beneficial to look into some smaller price companies. I mean, even if we look at it and find out it's not gonna work, at least we tried.
We'll discuss with Victor next time. So we're gonna jump into LPN. It's also a current struggle for hiring. We have been unable to hire the LPN position here at Alley Creek. So it's similar, we have potential solutions. So Dr. Berryman has contracted out, or has a tentative contract that could be placed on the board agenda in January list, but they also have full-time jobs and they can't come very frequently. So we can continue down that path and just continue at our current rate. And then option 3 is what we internally investigated and I think recommend is to look at being more competitive with LPNs. We know they're out there. That's a highly sought after position. It's not like custodians where you can pull and slim. LPNs are out there, so $25 an hour we believe is more attractive to raise those. This little grid down here is some financial calculations. So since we've had the vacancy, we've had just shy of $32,000 for that position. We've paid $5,000 between the person we had in the position at the beginning of the year plus the sporadic substitutes I talked about. And then we increased the starting rate and since we have a practice of increasing internal candidates to keep them above our starting rate, that also person would also have to get an increase to stay above that new start rate of $10,000. So we have enough budget to make it through this year, then it would actually impact the total budget moving forward. We would have enough to get through the second half of the year if we wanted to raise that starting rate. So we would start as soon as January 19th, 20th, whatever that Tuesday is.
What's our current rate right now?
It's 20 and some change. I think it's like $20.20 or 30 cents, something like that.
Sounds right.
Somewhere in that range.
So what's the state, requirement for, the health room to staff the health room?
I'd rather
I'm
defer
trying to remember that too.
It is a certain amount of kids per RN.
No, well, no, I don't mean it that way, I mean, is it a state requirement that we have an RN in the health room?
An RN, yes. This would be an LPN, which would be a,
Right,
what's it?
like,
And so the RN is technically the teacher, it does all of it, and the LPN would be their
So,
support staff.
you can't have health aides, you can't have.
That is what this is equated to, essentially.
Okay. So we have one nurse per district?
One nurse at Albee Creek and one nurse between the high school and
We do
We have-
currently have a volunteer LPN who's helping us out 3 days a week, and she has been a godsend, to say that, thank goodness. But again, that's a temporary basis, but that's helping us out, you know. There's 800 kids here in this building,
Sure, sure.
and as you can imagine, at that age level.
Sure. So we have an LPN at all 3 schools.
No, so we currently have 2 RNs, 1 staff, and 1 LPN, and we have 1 vacancy.
2 RNs.
Correct.
2 buildings.
So, yes, there's one nurse that covers the high school and the middle school, and there's 1 nurse that covers out. And we also have 1 LPN that mirrors the high school, middle school, and flip-flops days so that there's somebody in the health room, and we have 1 LPN currently vacant here. So we would technically have 2 RNs and 2 LPNs that would service the district. Which I believe is what around when we're allowed to have per kid ratio for RN now.
So when the
I
middle
just-
school, high school merges,
Those
it'll
two.
be 2 and 2.
Correct. Yeah, so we've been able to get substitutes, we've been able to find a volunteer who can help volunteer a couple days a week. But here at the elementary specifically, the kids visit the nurse quite frequently and need additional support than secondary. As kids come down.
It would be interesting to know, if we could find out, what the state requirements are for having an RN in the district. How many RNs, or if it's RN for how many students?
It is, it's an RN per how many students? I just don't know how many students.
So are we, do you know if we're required to have 2 RNs?
Based on a number of students, yes.
Cause that's on top of your LPN.
Well, the LPNs would be above the RN, or, sorry, the RN would be above the LPN.
Where we really run into in trouble also, and again, this is not a Littlestown problem, this is across the whole
Field
Commonwealth.
trips and stuff?
Field trips, and some of the students that have special needs that are on some, you know, and things like that, where it's actually a requirement and so on. And basically the law says we cannot require the parent to, you know, to take care of that. We have to make that accommodation. As a result of that, some schools have really curtailed the amount of field trips that they've done, which is unfortunate.
And the RN's compensation is part of the collective bargaining agreement for the teachers.
They are,
The LPNs are the support staff.
yeah, no, the RNs are equated to a teacher, they get a certificate, and they're part of the teacher, category. They're being staff teachers, where the LPN, yes, is considered a support staff, they call it support staff. That depends on how many years of service they have in the I believe it's $50,000 a year.
Could be whatever the teachers are.
Yeah, and then it would go up where it's based off of their education, years of service. Yeah, I don't know, the salary increase is 100%.
I'm sure you got a copy of the teacher's contract.
The CBA,
Yeah, it's in that, all those documents.
no, the documents I would've gave would've just been the financial ones, but it would be, it's on the old agendas if you wanna look back. It's 2 years ago, but we do have some in the district office if you wanna
Okay.
do a copy, or we can always send you a copy. I'm saying is that if you received other documents, the ones I sent weren't the contracts out. I sent the board all the audits, AFRs, and presentations. So I guess I'm just looking from, since Dr. Barrett's not here, we're just looking for a direction if we want option 1, 2, or 3, so we can, move forward with that.
What's the confidence level that we get applicants for race and
I've always been skeptical type that if you raise rates, it doesn't guarantee people will come. But in this case, we believe we will have at least a fighting chance of getting those. Like I said, the candidacy pool is large enough that we believe we can possibly pull somebody to come in for this position. We have, obviously, they follow the school year that LPNs do, so they're off in the summer. They also follow the school day. So if there's an LPN who wants to not work long hours at a hospital, who's gonna work here. What we've heard is the rate that we're currently paying is too small compared. They can't take that much of it. But they can't, they can't personally take that much with 9 months and less money per hour. So that's where that struggle comes in, that's what we said that can't guarantee 25 is gonna bring anybody, but it's at least an attempt.
They don't get paid over the summer.
But if they're not working,
They can get another
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, they could, yes, they could work at the hospital part-time in the summer.
The step 1 bachelor's, the bachelor's degree in the teacher's contract is $61,694.
so not 50.
60.
61,394. This is the teacher's contract.
Improved in 22, 23.
That would be a 23.
No, this would be the teachers.
Oh, okay.
according to this, we still have some money that we can use to fill the vacancy, to just get us through the year.
That, it's also
Maybe.
showing we have enough to raise the $25 an hour starting for the rest of the year. That's what that is showing. It's gonna,
Okay.
out of the 32.
So then where's that gonna put us for next year?
Well, that would be part of the budget conversation. We'll have to increase the budget also for next year.
Right, so here's the thing. I don't know why you guys don't get this. Every time you add an increase, and I know that our hands are tied, I get it, our hands are tied. So I know you can't, there's some things you can't control, I get it. But what I'm hearing, and let me know if this is not, if I'm not listening, hearing this correctly. What I'm hearing is our current staffing is gonna be perfect once we get completely into the high school.
We don't have the fourth staff member that rounds out that perfectness. We have a vacant position. We have a vacant LPN position at the elementary school that we have been unable to fill for a school with 800 kids. Which
We don't have middle school, right? Middle school, you know, yeah.
middle school and high school,
And we currently,
there's one RN and one LPN that's shared between the middle school and the high school. So
Okay,
there's one person in each of those buildings at a time.
they swap days, so when the RN's at the middle school,
alright, so
they'll
then
get to the
we'll
high
switch
school.
one LP.
Yes, so that's where this comes in. We can't fill the current short LPN. We're looking at, we raised the rate $25 an hour, to hopefully fill that vacancy and be able to be competitive. Because when Dr. Berry was interviewing people, that was the main consensus is we're not paying enough for them to come. They would like to come, we're just not paying enough for them to leave where they're at to come here and stay. That is direct feedback from the interview process, which she's had several candidates come. That's why we brought it, to the finance committee, because she's tried since, I believe, September to hire somebody. She's just not able to.
So it's 3 is
So we will, I believe we wanna, Dr. Martin, we wanna put the support staff matrix as like an addendum that shows it's $25 an hour. That the board approved, like I'm just asking, I guess, the next steps, if that's option 3, do we need board approval to amend that support staff matrix? Okay. So then I'll have that on January from this discussion, and we can post that after approval in January. So I wish I had that process. Alright, any further discussion? We'll do the last item here, try to wrap it up here. It's baseball and softball, so I have the handouts that I gave you, on the screen is just the timeline. So, the handouts are front and back, so it should be in order. So the front should say original recommendation, and that's what Brian from Turk Court, and I would have gave you that we discussed, last April, to the board. You remember he presented kind of these options, we had some discussion around those, and then he was going back to design some of these options. We're now through most of the design, and we're looking to finalize a bid package that he can then present to the board here February 2nd. So that's where this comes in. So, like I said, the first one was the original. The second page, it says new recommendation, and we're gonna look at that side by side with, the budget that has like the yellow highlight. So we're gonna kind of side by side comparison, because the one that says, baseball, softball budget breakdown is gonna equate to what the recommendations are for base bid, at alternates. So I'm just gonna go down through the list and we'll look at the budget numbers and kind of see them side by side, so we're kind of in tandem back and forth.
What did we already spend on that?
So what we would have spent is if you look on the budget breakdown, that has it highlighted in yellow, not included in the budget, that's what the board approved for turf tracking court to do feasibility and design.
Already, done.
Well, you can see how much we paid, he's still working through some steps. Yes, there is, that is what the contract price, that'll go throughout the contract, through the construction phase until the end of his contract when the construction's done. So he'll get progressive payments as he meets criteria. So the next one would be, once the bidding is done, we would select a successful bidder, he would then raise the bidding bucket and get some more money, and then when the construction is complete, he would get the next one. So that's a conversation we'll have here in a moment, but the base bid, baseball, softball, you can see are virtually the same. The difference between the original and now is item 6 and item 8 on softball. So item 6 is parking. Internally, our recommendation is to include parking in softball. When we talked about it, that was a discussion topic at the board in April. Internally, we believe parking is necessary there. One main reason is for ADA compliance for handicap. If we would add the parking, they wouldn't have to travel from the track or from Park Avenue down the steep hill to reach and add accessible pathways.
Don't we talk about a walkway from the parking lot to it rather than to another parking lot?
Correct, because the walkway would have to come from the track down, which is a pretty far distance if you're in a wheelchair to travel, and to go to the bathroom would be the whole way back across. So with the parking lot, we would have obviously handicap parking spaces, and we would have, in the drawing showed, a concrete pad that would accommodate ADA compliant or restroom. That was what the recommendation was, and that's where we thought internally those parking spots and how they could be able to go and view softball. We have a pretty active softball teams, and people would like to visit that, so that having that parking there seems like a good solution. And then number 8 is we also looked at we don't have electric capabilities like we do at the stadium to tap in to add a scoreboard. We wanted to add a scoreboard. That was something we kind of missed in the first thing, so we would have some fees associated with getting some electric to the softball field to get the scoreboard there. So those are the 2 things that we added to the base bid from the first one, and then the alternates are the same, except we added ball control netting. That was the discussion on the board level, that if we added parking, we might want to look at adding ball control netting to stop foul balls or hitting the cars near them. So that was an alt add. If we want to do that, if parking is in the base bid, we might want to add that back. So we're gonna jump into the budget side of things, which is the next page. Like I said, it says the budget breakdown. So that's almost identical. Remember, the budget, we're trying to cap ourselves out at $750. So the numbers you see is what Brian gave us in the feasibility study at the most costly piece. So I picked what the most cost would be if everything came in unfavorable at a bid standpoint. So you can see all the numbers down below in base bid. I picked the highest one, highest range that he would have gave us in those categories, all the way down. You can see at the top I kind of summarized it. So it says total budget 750, total estimated budget of 752, and then he recommended an estimated contingency of 50%. That's it's equated to like our change order category. Now, my opinion, 50% might be a little high for the scope of work we're doing, because it's not a lot of renovation and not a lot of, I should say, in-depth work that's being completed, so we wouldn't anticipate a lot of change orders. So that could be brought down. And then the alt adds, you can see, is 400,000. The big topic that we need to decide is, out of that 750, we never discussed if the design fees and the feasibility are part of the 750, or if they need to be excluded from the 750 for the project costs, because that drastically changes what the budget we're trying to hit, if it's included versus not.
I don't know why it wouldn't be included, carbon black.
It just was never a discussion to know how we design, knowing if it's in or out.
What was the
Well,
practice for the old project?
So feasibility study would have been part of it, but we also took out debt accommodating that. This is self-funded, so it's all coming from our funds regardless. This 86,000, we would have enough in capital reserve if we put it out. If we put it in, we just have to scale the project back there. essentially $87,000 less of a project. So it can be done either way. Past practice, yes. Some of it is, if you wanna say that was part to get us to bid day, but yes, the design fee and feasibility studies were part of the project.
I know there was conversation in the past about scoreboards and revenue generation from scoreboards and stuff like that. Is there any other potential revenue bringing something back, kind of getting out of the investment, that would be something that could be kind of looked at to offset what we're doing?
That would be the ad revenue for scoreboards. So we're looking at getting 3 scoreboards with this. This would be baseball scoreboard, softball scoreboard, and the stadium scoreboard. That was part of the project that was looked at for design. Now, Turk Driving Court has recommended, since scoreboards are so various with different companies and they have so many accommodations and bells and whistles, to work with a direct vendor through CoStars or cooperative purchasing to pick those bells and whistles that the district wants, and then get a price for those. That was his recommendation, to put it out the bid for somebody to provide that. We would have to have every exact spec that we wanted, and he didn't recommend that. So that was part of the price, and the scoreboards in the total estimate, so we can't go to bid day and say, oh, it came under budget. We also have to make sure that the scoreboard amount is within that budget range as well. So I estimated, based on his was $35,000 for baseball, $35,000 for softball, $75,000 for stadium. Now I know stadium ones can go astronomically higher, but yes, there is options for ad revenue to offset that. It's not a upfront cost; it's a lifetime gain back. So that's something that the board wanted to. That was a conversation previously. We were looking at adding stuff to the current scoreboard or revamping the scoreboard. Is we could pay more now to get more in the long term if we had that ad space to generate. But that's something we have to know ahead of time to then have those accommodations here. So when we're looking at the base rate, we went and I just put these numbers together and I was like, we just never talked about if it's in or out, to be able to know if it's part of the 750 or not. Because it does make a huge difference with the 7,000.
I have a question for you. Where are we gonna get the money to do this whole project?
Well, we have the 2 land sales, which equates to the 750. If the board would select anything above that, we do have capital reserve funds that we keep as a fund balance, essentially for capital reserve. Generally, it's about 1.2 million that the board can levy to then increase the project if they wish, if the whole acts are close enough and they wish to raise that. Right now, it's a tentative budget of 750. That's like our goal. But just like in the project, they had a goal to meet, and then they
So
wanted
like
to,
the
they
high
could go
school,
above it.
what was the high school supposed to originally come in at?
It depends on what time we got.
And the
prices.
feasibility study, what was the estimated cost of the high school?
Originally, I believe it was 35,000, and then it quickly went to 40, and then 50.
And where are we at now?
We were at, yes,
57.
and that was mainly when all the construction costs, supply chain, and everything went to raise all those rates.
Wasn't it, I mean, we added that addition to that high school, we really didn't need it. I mean, our enrollment dropped every year for like 5 years. So
that was over.
That was addition.
Yes.
We're not here.
So, yeah, some of it was, the consolidate is to address the reduction in enrollment. We're reducing the square footage totally between the middle school and the high school, plus,
Then we'll reduce costs.
yes, because,
forever.
and MAMS is, an outdated building, which has a lot of maintenance costs. The new updated building, we anticipate that those maintenance costs should be less.
Mr. Lovell, a question for you. Under the alternates, when we were putting together the scope of the project, hopefully preparing to get bids and whatnot, there was some discussion regarding the warning tracks for girls softball as well as the guys baseball. With your baseball background and so on, how important is that warning track as a safety feature? If you're running back there after a fly ball and so on, and you don't feel that difference in the earth under your feet, running into the fence probably is not a real good thing. The fence doesn't give a whole lot. We were going back and forth as should that be an alternate or should that be in the base? And one of the things we talked about, well, let's see what Nick thinks about that.
Well, as an umpire at the high school and the college level, I've seen a lot of outfielders hit the fence very hard. And more so that happens on in the high school fields where there's not a loading track. And then you gotta have your training around. It's not a pleasant thing. Definitely, whether it's an alternate or in, I think we definitely need to get the price on it, as a bid. Because again, that comes down to safety of our student athletes, and I don't think that's necessarily in the place where we should make one.
Thank you.
So I guess there's two questions that I have for the committee is, one, would be obviously the design fees, if we're including those or not. And then two, if you're going to change any of the base bids versus all ads before we would present this to our traffic board at the February board meeting as a total package to go advertise. So Brian would have photos of the architectural designs. He would say, this is in the bid, this is all ads, this is something cut, stuff like that. So just want to make sure we have those tied up for February 2nd with Brian, because I'm going to be meeting with him, I believe, I have to look back, it might be next week or the week after. And that was some of the homework I have is to make sure we shore up what the board wants to see or the committee wants to see as a tentative package. You can always change it before bid day, but that at least gives us something, because he's not sure based off the last conversation what's in or out.
I would recommend moving part to.
Okay, and continue to keep ball control as an all ad.
As an alternate, and then if we choose one, we'll choose the other.
Okay.
We'll choose one, we'll choose the other. And because that's the biggest cost there. And that's just something that we have to determine. Do we want to put cars in that close proximity that we have to protect?
Okay. Any other feedback, comments?
Seems like everything else kind of,
Everything else seems pretty much the same.
Yes.
and that is part of the other.
Yep. And then I guess the next linear question is the design fees. Because then I'll just remove that from our total budget of what we're targeting to do.
That wouldn't be fair, it wouldn't be covering past practice. Your past practice, not yours personally, you're saying generally, in general, past practice is design fees are part of, capital.
I think usually we have that discussion ahead of time. This one in particular, we wanted to get the company and go to design, and it really was a discussion if that was within that scope of budget.
Because we, in essence, did it in two different.
Normally it's all done in one. It's usually a feasibility and you know that is incorporated. Feasibility is not generally a lot of cost. And then the design's already, wanting to go to package, it's all part of what we go out to bond for or debt service for. It's all incorporated in the architectural cost. We kind of did it in separate stages, and now that we're getting to the bid stage, we never really talked about if that was in or out.
So is what we built all of the rest of this based upon? Was that based upon design fees being included or not being included?
Not included.
Right now, they weren't included, so every notion of what the budget was did not include it.
So so just from the beginning, if it's not the capital project, was this number?
Yeah, so
not-
we already paid this, we've already paid all this money out of capital reserve and approved those out of capital reserve. It's just within the scope of work, historically, we encapsulate them all in one, and we just know we have the ceiling budget of $750. So I just need to know if I need to reduce that ceiling, or if this is outside of that ceiling, knowing that we wanted those bids to equate to that.
Because it's not part of the bid.
Correct.
Because we've already paid it, or we've
Yeah,
already
so-
contracted it, we've already approved those.
Because we needed the information in order to make the decisions, in order to put the budget together.
Yeah.
We had to do that.
So if you remember the discussion we talked about with ACES Loop, we would have to have design fees to get to us a bid package. That's kind of the what was requirement from our architectural and borough and planning standpoint. You have to have those approved, you have to go to the county, you have to do all that stuff. That's a cost, and it's an upfront cost, so you have to pay to even get to bid day. So that's where I said, like, if you're approving a project, we knew we wanted to get to this day with athletics, and these were costs to get there. I just need to know if they're included in
What's the
the
total of the two land sales?
$750.
Then it should be-
Without lesson fees. So
It should absolutely be included. And the fact that we've already spent $63,235 without even voting on this as a board, that's
they
a lot of
did.
money.
They voted on the feasibility and the design fee costs, both individually.
Right, but we didn't vote to act, and maybe wasn't here for this, and that's possible, but, I didn't think that we as a board voted on the project as a whole.
We haven't got to that stage yet, so the next
So I was
stage,
right.
so the next stage would be,
No, I wasn't right?
No, because we've approved it on the capital project list, so that's one level of approval. We've approved the design contract, and
That's
everything has met approval up to this point.
yes,
But
correct.
did the,
Every step has been approved.
I got you, but did the board actually vote to approve and do the project as a whole?
We have approved that as a capital project. It goes through many stages of approval as we get to there. So the next approval will be the bids.
So, well, the next approval would be to get advertised for the bids, and then when bids come back, we would approve the awarded bid.
I
So there-
understand all
so
that,
there's
but
so
before you
yeah,
even get to all
yes.
that, you have to approve as a board, have to approve if they want to do the project.
That was part of us going to design. So the feasibility was the concept, we wanna look at it, get costs.
Okay.
When we got costs and we came back to the board, we said, we wanna go to design, now we got costs, we wanna do that. That signals, yes, they are willing to do the project, but when bid day comes, that's when we actually would officially approve a cost and a scope of work.
Okay. You guys are doing a great job talking this into it. I'm telling you, I don't remember a vote from the whole board to actually approve this project, not
Well, I'm sure
the
you were on the board
design
at
and
that
not.
point. We've only been on for a couple
Yes.
months.
So when we contracted with Turf Traffic Court to design the project, all the board members who voted for that, when it was approved by the board, it says we are willing to go to bid for this project. That's what all the design work and all
And
of
there
our
was a vote
work,
on
yes,
that. Okay.
that's where that $82,000 contract, because part of this $82,000 is to get to bid day, and then eventually complete the contract, complete the construction.
Well, it's on the capital project list too, right?
Correct,
So
yeah.
that, but
So just because it's on the capital project list doesn't mean it was approved by the board.
we approved the capital project.
Yeah, the board approved the
When
capital
things
project.
show up on the capital project list, it is funny, it is.
No, they don't
But
just show
things
up, we
show
vote
up
on all of it.
Okay, so things show up on the capital projects list that aren't voted on. And I'll give you a prime example. The new loop or parking new loop that we were thinking about putting at the elementary school, right out front here, okay? That was not on the
We
capital.
decided not to put it on the
We
capital.
decided not to
Right,
put it
so-
in the capital projects list.
Right,
We,
but it wasn't.
this is where we decide what we wanna take to the full board to vote to be on the capital project list. And we didn't vote for it, we didn't send it forward to the full board, we stopped it. So there was no loop that showed up on the capital projects list. That was us trying to come up with a capital projects list to vote on at the full board. We didn't put it on there.
And then the items that we did put on there were approved by the board as the capital project list.
Right.
So, I'm just gonna circle
To
back,
me,
sorry.
if
You say it's
the
in,
land sales were $750,000, I think that's what we thought the whole total project would be.
okay,
So I think.
Yeah, put it in,
For the base bid.
Yeah.
750 base bid.
well, I would remove, so 750 would then, I would less off the 86,890 from the 750, or now total budget to hit per bid day would be the difference between the two. That's what,
But if
That's
you-
what I was
But if you take parking and put that in the add alternates, then.
That's still- that
doesn't
just-
Scale anything back.
Right.
not until we know what bid day is to know what the numbers come back, so.
Right.
Yes, so right now, as our total budget will just be one-for-one reduced $86,890.
I would anticipate that would lessen the quote though.
Yes, correct, yes,
So, yeah.
okay. And I believe you said in from the beginning, so
What was that?
the 86,890 you wanted, I just wanted to make sure I didn't exclude it, and then you said,
I
where's the
think,
design?
I think it should be included.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
she's
That's what we're all
asking.
saying.
Yes, yeah.
Now,
Okay.
you said the two land sales were part of what was gonna cover the cost of it?
So we've had one so far,
Mhm.
and there's one pending, which we believe will be within the next few months.
Okay, so what was the first, I'm not asking for totals, I'm just asking, the first land sale, the, result of that land sale, what was that money designated for?
The land sale,
Uh-huh.
the board designated it towards that funds. That's what they,
First land sale?
both land sales, yes.
Full land.
Good fun,
Okay, so we don't think?
Yes, when we got to feasibility, before we went to feasibility, when the land sales were going through, that was the stuff. The whole discussion was what to do with that money, and then it led to improving baseball and softball with that money.
Okay. So we're okay with going forward and then knowing that we're gonna go forward in the new year, next school year, with likely not enough money for special education and a few other challenges that we're gonna have? I mean, are we not gonna have a cushion, like any type of financial cushion, I imagine?
We have the fund balance that we just allocated from the prior, which we will look at again during the budget cycle. So,
That will be
April, May, and June, we'll look at our fund balance in conjunction with the budget and what that impact looks
You
like.
guys have been spending down that fund balance for the last couple months now, on different projects. I'm just giving you the facts.
Yes, so fund balance ebbs and flows, it goes up and down based off of when those large project comes in. So,
Okay.
yes, we have some large projects on the horizon,
Okay.
but post that, we don't really have too many, since we conducted most of those.
This will be part of your next month.
This one,
I'm thinking,
the grant work would be the next largest, this is smaller in scope than the grant work. That's to do the lower level HVAC, the blue gym, the window replacements, the HVAC units here, that's several $1 million, where this is a lot smaller.
Yeah. I thought we already.
Will approve the contracts as they come through,
Okay.
so that, yes, we have awarded that from the state, we've already committed to that from a board standpoint, we have
Right.
written,
Okay.
commitment to that. Just real quick, tentative timeline, like we talked about, turf track report, February, you can see that on there. One item I didn't get to is, within this, the dugout design. I can provide more at that at a later step, but, there is some design fees with this that I'm not in agreement with, that we're working with the turf track report. But there are some options we're working at, so I'll pause on that since we're running out of time at a later date, at the next meeting on January 27th. That meeting is, so then the timeline here, like we talked about, budget is April, May, and June, auditors will be in January.
Tom, I know we're running out of time. When did you say our auditors were going to give their brief report?
Monday.
This coming Monday?
Yeah,
Got it.
so I'm gonna be allocating my normal, time
Gotcha.
to them, on Monday's work session. So, yep, that'll be attached. I'll have packets for every board member to have, and the auditors will work through them. They usually tell you the pages that they're referring to, and they'll have a 10 to 20 minutes, depending on questions, presentation.
Mr. Showbaker is very reluctant to toot his own horn, so sometimes us others have to do that once in a while.
Very briefly.
The fact that our revenue is significantly over expenses, actual wise, is a really good thing. The fact that I've learned that through the audit process that we have an extremely clean audit, no corrective actions, and not even any suggestions. And I would just say in that regard, that's pretty unusual. And I just want to say a big thank you to Mr. Showbaker and
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'd like a second.
Second.
Adjourn.